From The National, this is Trending Middle East. I'm Yasmin Al-Taji. It's Tuesday, July 15th. Here are today's headlines. Israel launched airstrikes on southern Syria yesterday after dozens of people from the Druze minority were killed in a new bout of fighting. 38 members of the Druze community were killed into Monday in the area of Sweida. Syrian troops have been deployed. Syrian Druze sources said pro-Syrian government militias attacked the city of Sweida on Monday from Sunni areas to its west. The Syrian Defense Ministry said it had begun, quote, spreading military units in the affected areas, unquote, and blamed what it called an institutional vacuum for worsening the chaos. Israel later said its military struck a number of tanks in southern Syria. It didn't provide further details, but a source in Sweida said the area where the tanks were hit was a launch pad for attacks on the Druze. The National's Khaled Yacoub Oweis reports.
The heartland of the sect is the Sweida Governorate, who has stubbornly refused attempts by the central authorities since Bashar al-Assad was ousted last year to take control.
Israel had previously intervened in April to halt attacks on Druze communities in Damascus and Sweida, which killed dozens of civilians. This followed the killing over 2 days in March of 1,300 Alawites in incursions by government forces and auxiliaries into the coastal Alawite region.
This time, however, the violence appears to be more wide-scale in that it covers most of the Druze strongholds in the governorate of Sweida, particularly a defensive line against Sweida, the provincial capital. This defensive line consists of an axis of villages, Druze villages, separating Sweida from the neighboring province of Der'a. At least one of these villages have fell to the attacking forces, which Druze sources say are supported by the government with artillery, drone, and even tanks.
Syria contains most of the world's 1 million Druze, an offshoot of Islam, also present in Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan. After a drawn-out war with Israel, Lebanon is tackling a new problem: landmines. Experts are scanning remote grounds considered contaminated to make sure they're clear of unexploded munitions left over from Israel's heavy bombardment of southern Lebanon during its war last year. The National's Jamie Prentis visited a site with the non-governmental organization Dan Church Aid, DCA, which has teamed up with the Army-run Lebanese Mine Action Center.
They hold one arm behind the back to avoid losing both in the event of an explosion.
Here he is with more.
The entire area has been cordoned off with red and white tape to keep residents away. Those homes are very visible. They're very close to the hillsides where much of the unexploded ordnance is. And there's a water pipe that runs along the valley, which sort of illustrates how this is an area that civilians often have spent time in. So DCA and the Lebanese army rely on a variety of sources of suspected contamination sites. The country's representative, Mike Bonk, told me that it is an ongoing process.
The scale of the bombing is clear from the damage to towns and villages across southern Lebanon. Israel continues to carry out airstrikes despite a ceasefire that went into effect in November. It's making the process of decontaminating the area complicated.
It's difficult to know just how many munitions Israel dropped on South Lebanon, and there's also a huge variety in the weapons and explosives that were used. For example, around 10 to 15% of the high explosive munitions dropped by Israeli fighter jets did not explode. Some of the explosives are also from Hezbollah weapons storage depots that were then scattered across civilian areas when the sites were bombed by Israel last year. Even though they were in storage, you have to treat them as if they were armed and ready to explode, Mr. Bonk said. And it's clear that the task is far from over. Lebanon is still dealing with the effects left by unexploded ordnance from previous wars, let alone last year's one. For example, it had hoped to be free of unexploded cluster munitions by 2028 and mines by 2030. But this most recent war is likely to push those deadlines a long way back.
A Palestinian ambassador is urging EU ministers to take concrete action on Gaza. Foreign ministers from the EU's 27 states are set to meet for the last time today before a summer break. Palestine's ambassador to the EU, Emel Jadou, spoke to The National. She said those ministers must take concrete steps to signal their displeasure with Israel's war on Gaza before that break.
Any agreement that allows them basically to get, their basic needs will be welcomed by us. But it really depends on Israel's abiding by this agreement. And
she said those steps could include a suspension of weapons exports or scientific research relations.
What we're calling for is what is of most important to us is to provide aid for our people, humanitarian aid, and to stop the starvation.
Gaza will be high on the agenda at the Brussels meeting. It's coming just about 1 week after the EU's foreign affairs chief, Kaja Kallas, said she had struck a deal with Israel to allow more aid into Gaza, with the opening of more crossing points and the resumption of fuel deliveries. The deal was supposed to be implemented within days, but has yet to materialize. More than 30 Gazans were killed by Israel just on Sunday as they were collecting aid, bringing the total number of dead in Gaza to close to 58,000. That's all for this morning's headlines. You can get these stories and follow our live coverage at thenationalnews.com. Yasmin Altaji, The National.